Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roast Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. One of the last big names in the transfer portal has finally committed to a new program. Arthur Kaluma, the former Creighton forward, has committed to the Kansas State Wildcats. I'm going to go over how big of an addition this is for Jerome Tang and the Kansas State Wildcats, and whether I feel that the Wildcats can be a really solid team yet again this season in college basketball. Now, Arthur Kaluma is a basketball player that has been really solid for the last 2 years at Creighton. He's a sophomore going now into his junior season of college basketball, and he could have gone pro the previous 2 seasons at Creighton. He could have went pro, but he decided to stay in college basketball because he is such a talented player and he has so many attributes that make him look like an NBA player, but he's just so close to being able to get there, but so far away as well. There's certain parts of his game that need to improve, and the NBA draft has him as a late second round pick more than likely, or even an undrafted player after his freshman season and his sophomore season at Creighton. And he did improve in certain areas this past season with the Blue Jays. He averaged around 11.8 points per game, 6 rebounds, 1.6 assists. Those are solid stats. He's a 6'7" forward that weighs around 225 pounds. And he's actually compared to a player like OG Anunoby, who plays for the Toronto Raptors in the NBA. He's a guy that has a lot of skill sets like him. He can drive in the lane. He can shoot threes at a fairly high level at his size. He has a lot of game like OG Anunoby, but he's nowhere near his level of game yet. He has a lot of improving to do. And this is a big loss for the Creighton Blue Jays because he would have been a big key piece to their team again next year. But unfortunately for Greg McDermott, he's not getting them back. Ryan Nembhard left and Arthur Kaluma left, but he's still got a really solid team coming back. But Arthur Kaluma was a very coveted name in the transfer portal. He took his time. He entered the portal a while back, and he was one of the last big names left. And sometimes waiting is key because of the fact the longer that you're in the portal, you can tell which teams want you and which teams would like to have you on your team because of the fact that they're waiting to fill that spot with you. They're waiting to fill that spot to be able to get a really good player. And Arthur Kaluma is just that. He's a really solid basketball player. There's, again, a lot that he needs to improve on, but he has talent, and if he just improves in certain areas, then I feel like Arthur Kaluma could still be an NBA player. Just because you get older in college basketball doesn't mean that you're going to lose your chance to be in the NBA. If you just keep on improving, the NBA scouts will continue to look at you, and you might eventually get your chance. But Kansas State landing Arthur Kaluma is huge because look at the other names that were holding out for Arthur Kaluma and hoping that they were able to land him. Arizona was a school that I think that really wanted Arthur Kaluma, and Arthur Kaluma is from Arizona, so that would have been a great fit geographically. He could have gone to the Wildcats, lit it up in the Pac-12, but they did get Keyshawn Johnson from San Diego State. Maybe that eliminated their chance there. Then you look at Kentucky. They are a mess right now. Yes, John Calipari has a stud recruiting class, the #1 class in the country. He's got all those 5-star freshmen, which is great, but they need experience and they need more talent and better bench depth on their team. Otherwise, it's just going to be the 5 freshmen. If Antonio Reeves leaves Kentucky, that will be a problem. They really needed Arthur Kaluma. That is a big loss not to get him. Very shocking that Arthur Kaluma didn't go to Kentucky because that is a lot of NIL to pass up, but maybe Kansas State and Jerome Tang are in better shape than some people think in that regard. Another school that was looking at Arthur Kaluma was the Alabama Crimson Tide. They were a school that a lot of people thought could get Arthur Kaluma because of the fact that Jaquan Walton, a player from Wichita State who was going to the Alabama Crimson Tide, Nate Oates would not allow him to go on the team because he ended up getting arrested, and that ended his chances of going there. And as everyone knows, Alabama's had a lot of problems with stuff like that already in this past season of college basketball. They don't want more of that. But Kansas State, they got Arthur Kaluma over all those schools, and that's very notable because Kansas State is a program that is a solid school. They are in the Big 12 Conference. They have that pull, but do they beat out programs like Kentucky and Arizona in basketball for recruits? No way. And getting Arthur Kaluma, a guy that has so much talent, and the fact that Kansas State is losing so much talent in Keontae Johnson, a guy that transferred from Florida, a great story after he returned from his collapse on the floor several years ago and then ended up playing so well for the Wildcats and could get drafted this year. That's a great story. And then you lose a player like Marquise Noel, who was the rock of the Kansas State Wildcats, if it wasn't Keontae Johnson. That guy was so good for them this past season. A 5'8" guard that was able to lead the team, shoot threes, and be able to assist at one of the highest levels of any guard in college basketball. I don't know if he's going to get an NBA opportunity, but he should because he is a great player, and hopefully for him he'll be able to have a shot to prove it at the NBA level. But he was great for Kansas State this past season. But luckily for Jerome Tang, he's getting Tyler Perry, a transfer portal guard from North Texas. So at least Arthur Kaluma is not the only addition that they're getting. Tyler Perry is a fantastic player, and he should be able to replace a lot of Marquise Noel's production, but not all of it. He's he's not as great of a passer, so the assists are not going to be there at the rate that they were with Marquise Noel leading Kansas State. But Tyler Perry can still pass the ball. I think his assist numbers will go up, being surrounded by better players on Kansas State's roster in the Big 12 than he did have at North Texas. So I think Tyler Perry is a fantastic addition for Kansas State because they were not able to land Max Amos, who went to Texas, so they had to get Tyler Perry or they would have had some issues at the point guard position. Naquan Tomlin's back as well. If Naquan Tomlin had to decide to go to the NBA draft as well, like Keontae Johnson, Marquise Noel, then Kansas State would have had a really hard time being able to find a center in the transfer portal because it's been a little late in the game. But luckily for Jerome Tang, they've got their starting center in place in Naquan Tomlin. They've got their starting forward in Arthur Kaluma transferred from Creighton, and they also have Tyler Perry transferring in from North Texas Mean Green. All those players are really solid. Desi Stills, he's another player that is no longer going to be on the team. He is gone as well. But Cam Carter's back. He's a really solid guard. Ismail Massoud, he did decide to transfer. So unfortunately, there is a mixed bag for Kansas State. They're not going to be a slam dunk top half team in the Big 12 because you have West Virginia, you've got Texas, you've got Kansas, you've got all these teams that are going to be really solid in the conference next year. But K-State is firmly in that mix now, getting Arthur Kaluma, because now they don't really have too many weaknesses. I think they need a little bit more depth. Maybe Kansas State can get another player or two in the portal. But overall, looking at this roster, it's not too bad because they've also got Day-Day Ames, R.J. Jones, and McCaleb Rich, a three-man recruiting class out of high school. And Day-Day Ames is one of the highest recruits that Kansas State's ever gotten. And again, showing you what Jerome Tang is doing, only going into his second season as the Kansas State head coach. He's never been a head coach before. He was the longtime assistant coach for Scott Drew at Baylor. But now he's bringing in all of this talent to Kansas State. That is crazy, and he's going to have them competing, it seems, in the Big 12 for years to come. There's going to be no drop-off. It wasn't a one-year fluke more than likely. We'll have to see how all this talent meshes together. But Arthur Kaluma is a big addition to pair with all these other guys because it just goes to show you Kansas State is competing, and they're going to compete in the future as well because they have David Costello, a 2024 five-star recruit as well. As long as he stays committed to the Wildcats, that will be huge as well. So Kansas State's looking good in the future, but Arthur Kaluma, a player that flirted with going to the draft a couple of seasons, a guy that could have gone to Kentucky or Arizona or some other schools in college basketball, he chose Kansas State. And again, what Jerome Tang is doing, getting players like Naquan Tomlin back, Tyler Perry in the transfer, Arthur Kaluma in the transfer, and getting really good high school players. Kansas State's looking solid for next year. They maybe can get another player or two if possible, but there's still players out there in the portal. Definitely goes to show you how different college basketball is today with all these portal additions. But Arthur Kaluma is a big addition for Kansas State. But if Kansas State's going to have good potential next season to be able to compete at the highest level possible in the Big 12 and be able to have a season similar to the success they had last year, then I think that Arthur Kaluma is going to be a big reason why. And that's a huge addition for Jerome Tang, is showing you the pull that he has at Kansas State, and he's definitely upped the program from where they were a couple years ago. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Arthur Kaluma transferring from Creighton to Kansas State, whether you were surprised that he transferred to Kansas State over some of the other schools that he was looking at, and how good of a job you think Jerome Tang is doing as the Kansas State head coach. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.